when we talk about Mary as being without sin, it's very important to look at how the Bible presents Mary to us. Mary is presented as the new ark of the new covenant all over the New Testament. The theological perspective is deeply rooted in both the Bible and the early church fathers, drawing connections between Mary and the new ark of the ark of the covenant, the old ark described in the Old Testament. I will look at biblical passages and the writings of the fathers to show that in the New Testament, Mary is presented as the new ark, as being all holy and all sinless. In Luke 1:26-38, Luke provides a crucial biblical foundation for understanding Mary as a new ark. In the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel declares to Mary, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, piskiazo, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. That is the overshadowing. Luke 1:35. The overshadowing recalls the language utilized in the Old Testament to describe the presence of God over the Ark of the Covenant. In Luke 1:39-56, Mary's visit to her cousin Elizabeth further reinforces the parallel between Mary and the Ark. When Mary greets Elizabeth, the baby in Elizabeth's womb, John the Baptist, leaps for joy. And Elizabeth exclaims, "And why is this granted to me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me?" The utilization of the exclaiming there, the particular very rare Greek word, only appears in the presence of the ark all over the Old Testament and the New Testament. The only time that very rare Greek word appears, and you can do a search in the TLG, the Thesaurus and Greek Reche, it only appears whenever one is in the presence of the ark, directly pointing to Mary as that incredibly important figure. This echoes the reverence shown to the ark in the Old Testament, presenting to us that Mary is indeed that all holy, all stainless ark of the new covenant. In the book of Revelation, John sees a vision of the heavenly temple. Towards the end of verse 11, the ark of the covenant is mentioned, opened in the temple. Immediately following that, John describes a woman clothed with a sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. The woman is very often, the earliest interpretations of Revelation 12 are a Mariological one, as Mary bodily present in heaven. Indeed, the church has believed from the beginning that Mary was bodily assumed. You got it right there in Revelation 12. The earliest interpretation of Revelation 11 is Mary, the new ark, interpreted by Paschasius Ribertus. Revelation 12, second century interpretations view Mary as a woman of Revelation 12. And how can you not view Mary as that woman crowned in glory if you read that that woman of Revelation 12 is the mother of the Messiah? Good luck getting around that. The connection to the ark is unmistakable. For early fathers that lay this out, you've got Saint Gregory the Wonder Worker, St. Ambrose of Milan, St. Irenaeus of Lyon, the Proto-Evangelium of James, and on and on and on. Why is it significant to refer to Mary as a new ark? The concept of Mary as a new ark underscores the profound reality of God's presence dwelling within her. This parallels the Ark of the Covenant, which housed the tablets of the Ten Commandments, symbolizing God's covenant with his people. Mary, as a new ark, carries within her the incarnate word, embodying the new covenant between God and humanity, the holiness of Mary. Just as the Ark of the Covenant was considered holy and set apart, Mary is understood as uniquely holy by virtue of being chosen to bear the Son of God. How does the angel greet Mary? Hail, Kyrie charitomene. What does that mean? Hail, having been fully graced. And later in the show, we're going to go into the tense of the Greek. She doesn't get blessed at that moment. She doesn't get filled with grace at that moment. She was filled at a time in the past. Even before the angel appears to her in Luke chapter 1, Mary is filled with that particular kind of grace. We can look at Protestant Bible scholars that are experts in Greek that will note that. The top scholars in the world in Greek will note that. And the early Greek fathers are unanimous on Mary. And by the way, the angel doesn't greet her and tell her, hey, you're full of grace. The angel greets her in the vocative, as in a titular fashion. Hail, having been fully graced. Hail, full of grace, in a titular fashion. Not, hey, Mary, how you doing? You're filled with grace. No, hail, an honorific kind of greeting. Hail, you who are full of grace. Very important. And this is noted by multiple Greek scholars. So, and the other thing that we point out before, and I'm glad I have enough time to get into to hop into the talking about the Whore of Babylon talk, is in Luke 1:28, where we talk about Mary is full of grace, and Ephesians 1:6. Luke 1:28 has full of grace. The angel Gabriel's greeting to Mary in Luke 1:28 contains a phrase of particular significance. We talked about it earlier. The Greek charitomene, often translated as full of grace. The term is a perfect passive participle, which shows us that Mary was in a state of being that was initiated in the past, but continues in the present. The Greek root word for full of grace, by the way, we have all of this laid out in our book that we wrote on Mary. The Greek root word for full of grace is charis, which means grace or favor, depending how it's used. The term is crucial for understanding the theological depth of Mary's state as being full of grace. The direct parallel to this is found in Ephesians 1, where the root word karitao is found in Ephesians 1. The verb form of the root word charis is used, or charis, however you want to say. The verse very clearly shows us right there as we read a keratosin, the root word being keratao, which is translated to the praise of his glorious grace with which he has blessed us in the beloved. The root word here is connected to charis and shares the only other area in the Bible, in the New Testament, and the Jewish Old Testament, which shares a linguistic connection, is with Luke 1, a direct linguistic connection with a term. What term? The term used to describe Mary in Luke 1:28. This linguistic connection underscores the depth of God's grace in both contexts very clearly. I know today's debate is not about the Immaculate Conception. It's about the sinlessness of Mary, but connected directly to that is what the church has taught from the very beginning, that Mary was holy and completely immaculate. The understanding of Mary as full of grace aligns with the Catholic dogma of the Immaculate Conception, which shows that Mary was preserved without any stain of original sin from the moment of her creation. You can use the language of conception or creation, depending on what scholastic you want to point to. We get that language directly from the papal bull, Ineffabilis Deus, from 1854. The idea is that God's grace was so abundant in Mary's life that she was kept free from the stain of sin. The association of being full of grace with Mary has profound implications for her sinlessness. If grace is understood as the divine favor that indeed does protect from sin, then Mary's state of being full of grace suggests and directly lays out her freedom from that particular kind of sin. For the sinlessness of Mary, you've got the great proto-evangelium of James, which is utilized in the early church, St. Clement of Alexandria, which was a late second century early church father, was the leader of the catechetical school of Alexandria, founded by St. Mark. You got St. Augustine, St. Ambrose, Ephraim the Syrian, and I could go on just with that list alone. But we've got about 6 minutes and 6.5, and I've got to talk about the whore of Babylon. Now, I reserved only 6.5 minutes for that because I don't have to prove the whore of Babylon is anything. The whole onus of that is on Dustin. To prove that biblically, that's the Catholic Church, and I don't envy that burden on him at all. The identification of the whore of Babylon in Revelation was debated all throughout church history. You very clearly have people early on saying it's one particular group. Hey, we believe it's the Nestorians. Hey, later on in history, they attributed it to Islam. Not official. These are not official catechisms or teachings, but various writers and commentaries. But one interpretation which arose during the time of the Reformation and later was one that you never find in early church history, was identifying the whore as the Catholic Church. You don't find it in ancient history. You don't find it even in the enemies of the faith. You figure you'd find something in early history. Just one thing before you get to Luther. You don't find anything. Not until you get to the anti-Semite Luther. You don't find anything in terms of the whore of Babylon being the Catholic Church. And by the way, he walked that back as well before he died. In his German writings, in his Disavowal and Purgatorio, which, by the way, he believed in purgatory in the beginning, before his death, walked that back. Luther flip-flopped in just about everything, including the deuterocanonical books, which, by the way, he never removed from the Bible, which is very telling. Never ever did. Those 7 books that are lacking today in Protestant Bibles, in the majority of them, Luther never removed them. Now, we hear that argument utilized by Catholics all the time. He never removed them. Whose fault do we blame? We blame it later on in very liberal scholarship that did remove those books. But can we put a little bit of the blame on Luther at his feet? Sure, he denigrated the status of them, but he never removed them. He was terrified of removing them. He would shake and think that God is going to strike me down if I remove from his word. He never did. But the evidence within the Bible repeatedly refers to Jerusalem as a metaphorical whore over and over throughout the Bible. The Old Testament references to Jerusalem as a whore. The prophet Ezekiel in chapter 23 vividly portrays Jerusalem and Samaria as two sisters who played the harlot. This metaphorical language underscores the spiritual unfaithfulness of Jerusalem. The book of Isaiah, particularly in chapters 1 and 57, uses strong language accusing Jerusalem of whoredom, portraying it as a city that has turned away from its covenant with God. There's no evidence that this is actually the early Christian church, or as Dustin would suggest, the church that Constantine would find. There's no evidence there either. So remember, there's going to be a very clear line in the sand drawn today. And my friend Dustin's about to get a chance to talk, but I want you all to pay attention to clear things. There's one person today who is going to utilize the biblical languages, scholars, and church history and sources. Now, I've gone to Dustin's website. You get 0. A big fat donut, 0. You don't get any of them. You get his opinion. You don't get anything scholarly. You don't get any exegesis. And today, if you want to hear a scholarly debate, you hold people's feet to the fire. You better say, okay, well, who is actually mentioning things and providing evidence? And you're going to find at the end of this debate, there's only one that will have done it today, unless by some miracle, a miracle that fell from the sky, Dustin all of a sudden changed his whole methodology. And the way his website and his theology and his debates are laid out has changed overnight. It will be a Christmas Day miracle. But I can promise you today, it will not. You will not get first-hand source material. You will not get biblical exegesis. And you will not get church history. I know that because of what we read of Ephesus 4:31. You don't get it. But you look in the Gospel of Matthew 23. I've got 2.5 minutes. How does time go by? Man, Dustin, when you get your time to speak, it's going to fly. It's going to fly, brother. Matthew 23, 37 to 39. Here you read of Jesus Jesus mourning over Jerusalem, declaring, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those who sent you. How often I have longed to gather your children together as the hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Revelation 11. The city spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where the two witnesses are slain, is identified as the great city that symbolically is called Sodom and Egypt, where their Lord was crucified. This unmistakably refers to Jerusalem. The historical context in which Revelation was written is crucial. Jerusalem at the time was a city torn apart by internal strife and external pressure. The Jewish people were facing incredible challenges. The city was on the brink of destruction. The apostasy of Jerusalem, marked by the rejection and crucifixion of Christ, as well as the persecution of his followers, aligns with the imagery of a wayward woman in biblical metaphor. Now, I provided that to you, the audience, even though the onus is not on me to say, well, I think it's Jerusalem. All I have to do is prove to you, or rather, all I have to do is rebut the claim that Constantine's created Catholic Church is that Whore of Babylon from the Bible. That's all that needs to be done. It can be done very easily. You don't even need to use the Bible. All you have to do is look through church history. Thus, as I'm down to my final minute, the time has flown by. We've laid out a case for Mary as the mother of God, the holy Theotokos, holy God-bearer. We've laid out a case for Mary as the sinless holy mother of God. And we've clearly shown that the language of the Bible does not in any way indicate that the book of Revelation lays out the Whore of Babylon as the Catholic Church. There's nothing there.